I want to add trigger warning for sexual assault and also for cancer and family illness. I know those are topics that can be really tricky for people to sit through, so if you don't feel comfortable or if you'd rather read it on your own first, go ahead and do that before you listen to me talk about it. Hola y'all, welcome back to my channel. You are watching Shelly Flowers Reads and Writes. I am Michelle Flores, where I talk about all things related to reading and writing. So today it is Friday, July 3rd. I am posting this the same day that I record it because I have some really exciting news. I'm still sick and I'm still waiting on test results. However, I have a poem that just got published. So I found out about this publication happening a couple weeks ago, but they just sent me the live link and I wanted to share that poem with y'all. So I want to take the time in this video to introduce this poem. I'd like to read it to you all, and I'd also like to talk a little bit about the process I went through to get it published. I think overall there are a lot of different ways people can go about getting published these days, and I wanted to help demystify some of that process. So I'll go kind of in that order. Okay, let's jump in. So first of all, the way that I got this poem published was obviously writing it. But once I wrote the poem, I submitted it through a website called Submittable. Submittable is an awesome website for anybody who's looking to get shorter pieces published, anything like short stories, poems, essays, nonfiction pieces. There's also a lot of contests that are posted on Submittable. I have a free account. I'm not sure if the accounts are still free, but I know that I'm able to submit stuff all the time and I don't have to pay for usage of the website. That being said, there is oftentimes a reading fee, particularly if that magazine pays the people that it chooses to publish. So it's a little bit of like making an investment. You pay your $3 to $30 depending on the type of submission you're doing, and then you get a payout of anywhere from $10 to $1,000. I've seen some prizes as high as $15,000 depending on where you submit to. I think it's also worth noting that not all of the magazines and journals and presses that are on Submittable pay their writers. There's a lot of conflicting advice on whether or not you should submit to publications like this. I'm personally in the camp of, if you want to get your foot in the door, you want to get some writer's credits under your belt, doing a free publication isn't a bad idea, but at some point you're going to want to make the switch to getting paid for your work, and it's okay to be choosy. That's sort of the route that I'm taking now. I really only submit to contests at this point because one of my writer's goals this year is to win some type of prize, and I also want to make sure that the work that I'm putting out there in the world brings me back financial gain. So that's the game that I'm kind of playing, and a lot of you might be playing as well. Now, with all that being said, the press that I got my work published through is called Alternating Current Press. They took a break for a couple years, and I actually submitted this poem, I think close to 2 years ago now. Totally forgot that I had submitted it, and a few weeks ago they emailed me and said that they were getting back online and going through all of their submissions and cleaning house so they could restart, and they wanted to accept my work. Editing Michelle here. I want to add that this poem was rejected 22 times before it actually got published. This is a really common thing, and I think it's so important to remember as a writer. Rejection is part of the process. Rejection is feedback, and instead of getting discouraged by it, what I did was look at the feedback I was getting, and if I got actual notes and feedback, I was constantly tweaking this poem. So I wrote it, I think, close to 10 years ago. I started submitting it for publication 2 years ago. 22 rejections later, here we are. And by doing so, it also helped push me into the semi-finalist stage for a writing prize that they have, which is really exciting. I was also a finalist for another poetry prize earlier this year, the Sandy Crimmins Prize, which is based out of Philadelphia. So I feel like I'm hitting this point where it's like, I'm always the bridesmaid and never the bride, and hopefully by the end of this year, something can happen and I can finally win something, because that would just like be the ego boost that I know I need. If you'd like to learn more about Submittable, I have a link for a YouTube poet. His name is Dimitri Reyes, And he went through an entire process of submitting something through Submittable. So if you're one of those people who's kind of like, I don't know about this, I don't really, how do I trust it? Definitely check that video out. He walks you through step by step on what specifically you need to do. And if you have any questions about it, just let me know. Okay, so now we're gonna jump into the best part, the actual poem. I am reading this from my computer, and I just wanna say I am president of the company of the struggle bus when it comes to computers. At some point while I was going through all of this remote learning chaos that happened because of coronavirus, my keyboard on my work computer decided to crap out on me, and I don't have a personal computer. So that sucked. Here we go. I'm gonna post like a little link here so you can see what the poem looks like on the website. The magazine is called The Coil Magazine, and it's an imprint of Alternating Current Press. I love the image that they chose to connect it to. I think it really matches the poem. And here we go. Carve and Release by me. After the doctors cut the tumors out of my mother, after the 1.5 years of chemo and radiation, after her jaw sagged and her eyes drooped, my mother began to remember. It was during her first year in Miami. Lizette was new to the city, to her teenage body, when her grandfather spied on her through the crack in the door. She was hanging the one red blouse she wore every Friday. Maybe she was too beautiful, with her thin arms and black hair that grazed the tops of her guitar-like hips. Maybe he just couldn't believe that someone so beautiful could be part of him. Whatever the reason, he glided into the room, grasped her from behind, and touched the breasts she was still growing into, the legs that never seemed to end, all the while describing the ways he could love her. She was still holding the red blouse, crumpling the lace in her hands, unsure of what to do. There was no prince to help her, no knighted brothers or angelic savior. But she did have a Wahida mother who stormed into the room after a day of roaming Hialeah. Olga crushed his guitarista hands as she thrust him into the burning Miami sun. She held her daughter's face and muttered a prayer Lizette could not understand. She led her to the shower, told her to clean herself, to never speak of the incident again. Mommy didn't cry as she remembered this. We lay in bed together. I let my breathing match hers. She asked me to rub her scalp. I grazed the tufts of baby hair that grew over the C-shaped scar. The end. Okay, so I just want to talk a little bit about the poem and some of the context of it. It's a fairly narrative poem, but this is based off of a conversation I had with my mother before she passed away. I've talked about it in other videos, I think especially in my MFA video. My mother was diagnosed with a glioblastoma brain tumor when I was about 20 years old, and she passed away right before I turned 22. Now, because I was away in grad school during that time, I didn't really get to talk to her very much, and so when we did talk, it tended to be these really big, heavy conversations about life. And this was a conversation that we had. I don't remember what brought it on, but she basically talked to me about a time where she was assaulted by a family member. And I remember being shocked by this, but then suddenly a lot of the things that she would do with me and my sister when we were kids made a lot of sense. She was really strict on sleepovers, didn't like us going to other people's houses. She was really strict on us wearing covered up clothing, like very modest clothing, if there were even male family members around in the house. And I always thought it was so strange, and I was like, why would we have to cover up their family? And then hearing about this incident, it all of a sudden clicked, you know? And I think this just goes to show the kind of generational trauma that is inherited through unresolved situations like this, where a very traumatic event happens and then nobody wants to talk about it within the family because it's considered shameful for the victim rather than the perpetrator. And I wanted to write about that. I think there's also something to this idea of suffering from a brain-based illness and whether you can really trust the memories that are starting to come to you. That was something that I wondered as I listened to this conversation. Like, was this an event that really happened, or is this something that my mother, I don't want to say made up, but in some ways that she kind of dreamt up, because there were times where she would speak and it didn't make sense, or she would confuse details or forget people. Like, I remember one time after her first brain surgery, she didn't recognize me for a few minutes. So things like that, I think all of these ideas were kind of pouring into my head, and I wanted to capture this moment of a mother who's going through an intense trauma relating to her daughter, and then me as the daughter being passive in that situation and just allowing the speaker to relay their truth. Please let me know what you guys think about this poem. I know it's a really heavy topic, but I personally have found that the more I can talk about these things, the better mentally it is that I do, especially on days when I have really bad days where I just get really sad. Being able to talk about my mom and the things that she went through really do help me get through the day. So that is it from me for today. I really wanted to share this poem with you guys. If you have other poems and other videos, let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to check them out and connect with other poets here on YouTube. You can follow me on Instagram, Tumblr, and Goodreads at Shelly Flowers. Like I said at the top, I also have a book of poetry that you are welcome to purchase called Cuentos from the Swamp. All the links and all that information is also down below in the description box. I post videos every Wednesday and Sunday, sometimes Friday, like today. And that's it from me. So, ciao y'all.